Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Bible. My name is Lisetta, and in this podcast I explore biblical teachings through a spiritual lens, or the other way around. Anyway, I am here to ask questions about things that your average pastor probably doesn't preach about on the Sundays. My question for today is: what if your spiritual practices, like your yoga, your ceremonies, your cacao drinking, your crystals, actually disconnect you from the sacred? What if you think you are building towards something holy, but that building keeps you stuck in a loop of lack, fear, and frustration? What if your spiritual ambition is the very thing blocking your awakening? In this episode, I want to dive into the Tower of Babel. I don't know if I pronounce it right in English, Babel. I'll just go with Babel. The Tower of Babel, it's a story in the Bible in Genesis. And it's a story where humans try to build a tower to heaven. But God wasn't impressed with that. And maybe this is not just a story from the Bible, but it is a spiritual metaphor that we can use today. Maybe this story of the Tower of Babel, where people try to reach heavens with building themselves with their own hands, is a metaphor for our distractions and our illusions of progress and our desperate climb towards something holy, but what we actually already carry within us. And we do live in a world that glorifies ascension. And we have to rise higher, go deeper, activate your energy, find your truth. And not only on a spiritual way, but also work and everything else. And most of the time we try to create it by force. What if our desire for enlightenment is building something that's destined to collapse? And I see many spiritual people circling from one ceremony to the other. And with all due respect, if you go from one ceremony to the other, it looks like it doesn't work. And if you constantly need a ritual or a substance to reach some feeling, you know that you are not there yourself. And you can't reach it by yourself. You need something outside yourself. So if you always need cacao, or frog bites, ayahuasca, all these plant medicine, or whatever you need, it can be something totally different. It's just an example that I give. But you can ask yourself why you need it to feel good or connect with something that you call divine. I don't think it is so divine if you need something outside yourself to get there. The divine is in yourself. And Christianity says all this work is not needed because they have Jesus as a middleman to the divine. But basically, they also put everything outside themselves and leave everything up to Jesus. They outsource everything with their belief in Jesus. So we are all doing it. I'm also doing it. So let's look at the story of the Tower of Babel or Babel. Anyway, these people in the story, they wanted to build a tower to heaven, a man-made tower to the divine, and they wanted to make a name for themselves. So this wasn't about communion with God, it was exactly about bypassing the inner work, using external achievement to force divinity. So maybe that sounds a little bit familiar for us. Because today we see the same pattern: chasing ceremonies, go to church, yoga poses, spiritual or religious workshops, crystals, biohacking, cold plunges, oh, you can name it. These are all attempts to reach the divine, and sometimes it is without embodying the divine. So let's look at the details of this story. It is in Genesis chapter 11. And I'm gonna read the story, it's not that long. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar. I don't know how to pronounce all these names in English. Anyway, they found this place and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used bricks instead of stone and tar for mortar. And then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. And the Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So this is the story. And in Christianity, this story has two main layers of meaning, as far as I know. First of all, it's a literal perspective. The story explains why the world has many languages and cultures. And second is the lesson that human pride leads to downfall. The goal of the people in this story is self-glorification and not communion with God. And well, this is the result. But now let's break down the story from another perspective. So, they couldn't complete the tower that they wanted to build because they couldn't understand each other. And this Babel means confusion, that mirrors the confusion that you can experience in this world of illusion. Because this world gave us many concepts about everything. And it's fed to us by television, internet, the news, politics, schools, doctors, churches. It's everywhere. And it is about who we are, why we are here, where we are from, where we are going, why we are going, where we came from, where the world comes from, and outer world things, and basically everything. It goes on and on and on. And at some point, you discover it is all an illusion, this what has been told to you all your life. And then the confusion starts to kick in. You start to feel lost in this world, and your mind gets stuck, and you feel easily overwhelmed by everything. And it's just confusion everywhere. And with all the knowledge of this illusion, you start to feel disconnected from this place. And this whole illusion, or actually disillusion, creates an imbalance within you. And this imbalance or confusion is the same as the state of Babel. You are out of balance. But when you take your time to quiet your mind and focus on your own center and your center of love that resides in you, if you are able to focus on that, you will start to remember where you belong. And you automatically move into a higher direction. And that goes automatically. And you don't have to build the tower to reach God anymore. Because you remember that it's in your very being. And it doesn't require building. It requires stillness. But because of the illusion, we think we have to push and have to work and have to build. But that's not the case. With all the pushing, you rush the process of enlightenment. And that is the whole issue. We don't have patience to let things grow and flow in their own time. We rush around, we read every article or book, listen to all podcasts, videos, go to ceremonies, workshops, etc. And we all do that to get a quick fix. You can't reach heaven without a proper fundament. And information is not transformation. You have to embody and live things. And spiritual people, they do these kundalini awakening sessions, for example. And kundalini is basically the spiritual life force energy in our bodies. And with these sessions, they kind of force this spiritual energy in our bodies to rise. But I think you should approach this with caution and the depth that it deserves, because it's a whole long process. And it's true that we hold spiritual energy within us that is hiding. But if you rush to unlock it, it can be deeply destabilizing for your nervous system, for your body, for your mind, for your soul, for everything. Because your body might not be ready. And if your body is not ready and you go to this spiritual retreat that promised awakening in the weekend, wow, I wonder how you come back from that. Because kundalini is not something you should chase. I understand you want it, we all want it, of course, but it is something that naturally rises when your inner system is aligned and when your nervous system is calm and your chakras, your energy fields are balanced, when your ego is humbled and your life is grounded in love and service, just like the Bible tells us. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So I'm not here to attack anyone on what we are doing, because we're all doing it. I'm also doing it. What I want to say is stop trying to rush your transformation. You are not behind. You are not missing anything. And awakening is not something you force. It is something you allow. And something you honor. And something that unfolds in its own time. And when it does, it is peaceful. It's not chaotic. And it's stabilizing, not overwhelming. And it also reminds me of all these verses in the Bible that tells there is a time for everything. This what I'm thinking about says, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up." And this always reminds me to just accept how things are in the moment, even if I don't really like the moment so much. If I'm gonna focus on what I want, then I'm gonna be feeling even worse about the situation right now. And the Tower of Babel reminds us of what happens when we try to build ourselves up to heaven through ambition or force instead of alignment. And when we try to ascend without listening and without being grounded. And this whole rising isn't about fireworks, it is about wholeness. So don't seek this awakening through speed, but seek stillness and seek integration and let the spirit rise when it's ready and not a moment sooner. Even maybe you wished it was sooner, but you have to focus on building a life that is aligned with truth. And you have to focus on that your life is soaked in love and care for yourself, for your neighbor, and for nature. And that you are accepting of how things are and be thankful and give praise for all we have. One of my favorite Bible verses is, "Give praise in all circumstances because this is God's will for you." And sometimes this state of Babel that we maybe not like comes when we are close to a spiritual breakthrough. And all the old programs and lies, they come up and try to keep you hostage before they finally leave your mind. And they die. And then this tower that you want to build towards heaven will naturally rise. So maybe if you are in the situation of the Tower of Babel right now, it's good news because you're close to a natural rise. I want to go to the story once again to look at it a little bit closer. Because it said that there was one language, and the one language and the same words, they symbolize a state of original oneness. And it is about the harmony within ourselves. A state of being where body, mind and soul are aligned, where they speak in one language. But then the people migrated from the east, and the east often represents the rising sun, the divine light, and the right hemisphere of the brain. And migrating from the east represents a shift away from this consciousness into duality, moving into materialism, and where we see humans beginning to build something out of their own effort. And the story says bricks, unlike natural stone, they are man-made, these bricks, and they represent ego, control, and artificial construction. And in spiritual anatomy, the bricks that are being called, they could represent the bones or the vertebrae of our internal tower, our spine. And the slime or the bitumen is the sacred fluids that help us rise up the sacred secretion in our bodies. And that will create inner light. But when it is confused or babbled, this energy becomes stuck. And instead of enlightenment, we get ego-driven ambition. But in the story, at some point, God comes down. And this shows how small our biggest ambitions really are in comparison to divine truth. Because even our tallest tower doesn't reach heaven. And even our greatest ceremony doesn't substitute for divine stillness. Because in this story, although there was already a tower built, God had to come down. So they were not even close. And then in the story, the confusion started. And this confusion is the same as can happen to us when we try to force our way into spiritual heights. And when we seek transformation through knowledge, but not through embodiment. And the truth is, you can't think your way into truth. And you can't read your way into peace. And you can watch so many videos about living in the present moment, but that keeps you away from being in the present moment. And you can't cacao ceremony your way into God. And you can't bend yourself into a yoga pose and expect your soul to unfold as well. In the story of Genesis, at this moment, they stopped building because they couldn't understand each other anymore, and that was too complicated. And this is what happens when spiritual disconnection sets in. The inner tower collapses, and we get overwhelmed, we feel lost, distracted. And this is also called the dark night of the soul. This is the moment of spiritual breakdown before breakthrough. And slowly our inner programs start to dissolve. But our old self fights to stay alive. But also this is a sacred process because it makes space for rebirth. And when we stop reaching for God through outward structures, we remember what Jesus says in Luke. He says, "They will not say, 'Look here' or 'Look there,' for behold, the kingdom of God is within you." And that's where this whole story is about, that the kingdom of God is within you. And I'm saying this a lot in my podcast. But I just want you to know that the kingdom is not hidden. It is just quiet. And it's been waiting for you, within you, all along. So no pastor, no ceremony, or no teaching can give you what you already carry. Because you are the vessel, you are the key, and you are the place where God has been the whole time. When you sit in silence and just breathe and let divine love rise within you, the sacred secretion, the inner oil, it begins to move upward. When you sit in silence and just breathe and let the divine love rise within you, your inner tower and the spine becomes a channel for divinity and love and light. And to remind you of this, I want to give a few verses from the Bible. The first one is this: "But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul." And in Psalm 46 we can read, "Be still and know that I am God." In 1 Corinthians we can read, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you?" In Matthew we can read, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." So many of us today are caught in a new Babel situation, like collecting rituals, spiritual tools, articles, videos, pastors, yoga gurus, whatever. But true transformation can't be bought, learned, or performed. Information is not transformation, and nobody can do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And we were never meant to build towers of identity, of effort, or of seeking. We were meant to live the truth and feel it and let it rise within us. And I believe it should be just as easy as breathing. Just allow it. Just let it happen and don't force it. And when we stop reaching outward and return to silence, we find clarity and we find home. And we start to remember that we are the temple. So if you find yourself in a state of Babel, maybe you're confused, restless, frustrated, impatient, then pause. Don't reach for another tool to fix yourself. Don't grasp at the next ritual. And don't stack another brick on the tower you're building in the name of spiritual success. But ask yourself instead, what am I building and why? Is it to feel safe? Is it to feel loved? Is it to feel seen? Is it to reach something I've been told I am not already? Because the truth is, you are already it. The very thing you've been climbing toward has always been within. The builders of Babel tried to make a name for themselves. And they built upward. And that was more out of anxiety, not out of alignment. And in doing so, they lost their shared language, they lost communion, and they lost clarity, and they didn't know what to do anymore. And the whole tower never finished. So that is what happens when we climb without grounding, and when we chase without listening. And when we build towers instead of just be and be still. And you are not here to reach God by force. You are here to remember that the divine already dwells within the temple of your being. As it is written in 1 Corinthians, do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? So your work isn't to keep climbing, your work is to descend into stillness, into silence, into truth. Psalm 46 says, be still and know that I am God. It doesn't say be busy and know that I am God, or be brilliant and know that I am God. No, it says be still. But that is something that we found very difficult. But I would challenge you to come down from the tower that you're building. Take a breath and feel your feet on the earth. And let the noise fall away until all that remains is the still small voice inside you. Because what Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. And you don't need to build a tower to get there. You just need to listen and remember. Because you are the vessel and you are the key. And you are the place God has been the whole time. So let the tower crumble. And in the quiet, if you can be quiet, finally rise without the tower